Yeah, you heard me. Loki is a chill guy. Loki is cool, everybody. Why are we all stressing out over Loki? All right, he is just there trying to enjoy his life, trying to enjoy the vibes of the universe, man, you know? And what does he get? He gets chained to a tree. Nobody will let him go. It can't be comfortable down there. A lot of people have brought up the questions of, like, how exactly is Loki going to the bathroom while chained to the Yggdrasil tree? How is this working out here with that? And you would say that Oda might not go there, but it is also Oda. He might actually go there. That might be a plot point at some point. Like Luffy, Nami, and Zoro go down to free Loki. And Luffy's like, hey, I forgot to ask you this last time I was here, but, do you poop? And Loki's like, well, finally somebody asked me about this problem. So here's the deal. When you finally let me loose of these chains, there's going to be a giant hole underneath me. It's like, okay, whatever. So in the last chapter, chapter 1136, right? Luffy, Zoro, and Nami had a little bit of a conversation separate from the rest of the group. This was right after the banquet where all of the giants explained all of the awful things that Loki has done, okay? Simply killing his father and also the king of the country isn't the only reason Loki has been considered the Accursed Prince. There's other reasons. And Zoro's kind of like, well, Zoro seems to be kind of believing the giants because most of the giants seem to be under the impression that, oh, yeah, no, Loki's a really bad dude. But also he's really powerful and strong. And he did make some promises to Luffy. So Luffy trusts him. And he's like, listen, he said he knows where Shanks is and he'll tell me where he is. I just have to go and free him first. And remember, Luffy is kind of good at reading people, okay? Luffy has his strengths and weaknesses. One of his weaknesses is Luffy is not the book-learning kind of type, all right? He also has a rather short attention span. But I'll tell you what, Luffy is a good judge of character, and if Loki was straight up absolutely evil, would Luffy not have realized that? Okay, One Piece is a really long story, so I feel like there's at least a few points where Luffy thought somebody was really good and they turned out to be really bad, but, I'm not immediately thinking of anything right now, so I'm going to assume that that never happened. Okay. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, like, Luffy's like, okay, yeah, you want me to free you and, you'll tell me where Shanks is? That seems like a fair trade. Zoro's kind of trying to keep him on track of, like, look, we'll hear him out. I want to get a judge of this guy's character. I want to talk to him for a little bit here. But if it's looking like he's lying to us or he's messing with us, then he's going to go down. And I think Zoro just likes to, because he's strong. Loki's a powerful dude. So Zoro's like, I want to test my steel against this Loki guy. There's definitely a vibe going on there with Zoro. And then you have Nami, who just wants to rob the castle. Like, Nami's not even, I don't even think really Nami even spoke up on Loki specifically. She was just like, oh, you want me to take you somewhere? Okay. Oh, we're breaking into the castle to steal a set of keys? Well, while we're there, might as well steal a bunch of gold and diamonds, right? Yeah, so Nami is kind of like, completely, I don't even think she really voiced her opinion on the Loki situation, on like good idea to free him, not a good idea to free him, or whatever, okay? She just wants money. So yeah. Road is also going along with them too, but the stuff at the banquet that the giants all went through, okay, so I mentioned in the review, it's very reminiscent of Odin. We have Odin back here, Odin flung his wet nurse across the room when he was born, and then he killed a bunch of serpents, and he lifted a giant boulder and killed a Wano bear at like age 4, and then he got into gambling in the red light district, and he started off a fight with all the Yakuza at like age 9, and then he had the harem wars later, so Odin had a rather rebellious, crazy youth, growing up. And Loki is the same way. Although, there are some key differences here that I just want to address, okay? So, Luffy says during the banquet, hey, yeah, Loki, so he's a good guy, right? Every one of the giants at the party, was like, no way in hell. Even Hiruden. And remember, Hiruden is Loki's brother. We know that King Harald is Hyrudin's dad. We also learn about in this chapter that the queen died a year after Loki was born. So it was kind of up for debate where it's like, yeah, I could see them being completely like, same mother, same father, brothers, Hyrudin and Loki. Hyrudin is a little older. He's in his 80s. Loki would be 63 right now, right? So I was like, oh, maybe they're only half siblings or something like that. The same father, but a different mother. Think the mother is the same. We just know that she's dead now, right? And that's kind of one of the reasons why Loki is considered the Accursed Prince. Ooh. But yeah, Hyrudin is like, oh, no, he's horrible. And all the other giants are there. There's even an older lady giant that's like, no, Loki is cursed, right? He's awful. He's an awful person. All right. So what's the first thing they bring up on why Loki is an accursed prince? Well, there was apparently a prophecy before Loki was even born that he was going to be an accursed prince, that King Harald would be slain by his own child. That must have been awkward for Hyrudin at the time, because this was before Loki was even born, and so Hyrudin would have been alive. So, like King Harald, we don't know how many children King Harald had. I mean, he might have had a lot of kids. I mean, you're the king of Elbaf. I mean, you're probably going to have a big family. I'm just saying, okay? So we know Hyrudin and Loki. There might have been others. Maybe there is a Thor out there somewhere. Who knows, right? But at any rate, that's a prophecy. Now, who said this prophecy? Where did it come from? We have absolutely no idea. Now, it is interesting because in this same chapter, we have the giants talking to Jinbei, and they mention that a lot of the giants have never seen a fishman or a mermaid or merfolk before, right? And so they're talking about Fishman Island a little bit. So in a chapter where we're discussing fishmen and merfolk and the giants don't really have a lot of interaction with them, and also we're bringing up a prophecy, I can't help but think of Madame Charlie, right? Madame Charlie did have the gift of divination and clairvoyance and stuff. She could predict the future, okay? I say could because she smashed her crystal ball, as apparently has given it up. She's like, I'm, seeing the future. No person was meant to see this. After she saw what Luffy was going to do to Fishman Island, she's like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I wonder what her job is now, Madame Charlie. She's not a fortune teller anymore. I guess she's just the owner of the cafe now. I guess that's just what she does for her full time. But she did have that ability. And if she had that ability, other people could have easily had that ability too. So it's very possible there could have been a fortune teller, some soothsayer that was living on Elbaf that also had the ability that Madame Charlie had of just yes, I can accurately predict the future. And yes, King Harald, one day you will be killed by your own child. All right. So, I mean, it happened, I suppose, but that doesn't tell us the whole story. We know Loki killed King Harald, and I'm assuming that 100% happened. I don't think there's anything somebody was using the clone fruit or something to mimic Loki or something. No, I mean, Loki killed King Harald. That happened. I'm with you on that. But the question is, was King Harald really the stand-up guy that everyone's saying he was? And is Loki really this horrible bastard that everyone's claiming he was, okay? So the prophecy did, get fulfilled. The next thing that comes up is shortly after his birth, they had the royal steed, I guess the king's royal horse, and that horse, the horse of fortune, died. That has absolutely nothing to do with Loki. All right, and we're going to find out here in a moment the string of horrible events that occurred one after another. And, Oda might be trying to make a little bit of a commentary on this because, back in the day when there was a more superstitious feel to society, causation does not equal correlation. So a lot of times when stuff that happens that could be seen as an omen, you kind of associate it with a bunch of other things, sometimes blaming a particular person or group of people for that particular thing. For example, for, a long time, anything of a change in the heavens, like a comet or a solar eclipse, would be viewed as oh, this is an omen, something bad's gonna happen. And occasionally, sometimes, bad stuff would happen. Occasionally, there'd be a solar eclipse and then an earthquake would occur. Or, a flood would happen or something. That has nothing to do with the solar eclipse, but people would blame the solar eclipse for that reason, right? So there might be something going on with this. It's there's a string of really bad luck that happens, and people want a reason. They want somebody to blame it on. And it's like, well, before Loki was even born, this soothsayer, fortune teller, whoever it was like, oh yeah, Loki, he's going to kill you, King Harald. Your unborn child will murder you. And so the deck was really stacked against this kid as soon as he was born. As soon as Loki was born, King Harald was probably looking down at him like, I don't know about this kid here. Okay, this kid's gonna grow up and murder me someday. All right. You know what I mean? So everybody was already kind of a little bit hesitant of like, all right, what's gonna happen here, right? So then the horse dies shortly after, and that was probably all a lot of people needed. Two things that are not even related. And if you asked Loki about this, Loki has no memory of this probably. Loki is probably just like, yeah, a horse died when I was like 2 months old. What? Like, that had nothing to do with me, right? So that was the first thing. Second thing is, remember that when Loki was born, it was the same year Goldberg and Rode were born, but also it was the same year that Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, murdered Jorl. Okay, with the Semla incident, all right, where she grabbed and smashed his head against the ground and he died, okay? And then Mother Caramel had to take all the children from the Lamb's house and leave Elbath for that reason, okay? Once again, Loki was a baby when that happened. He was not even in the village when that occurred. But that doesn't matter. It's like, no, and also remember, you know, there's superstitions on Elbath and everything like that, right? You know, religion is very heavily incorporated in this and all that. So it's like, okay, so they predicted that Loki was going to be born and he was going to kill the king, and then the horse dies, and then Big Mom kills Jorl. Oh, it all has to be for this guy, this, you know, King Harald's son Loki. That has to be the source of all the misery and suffering, right? Then a year after that, so when Loki was 1, his mom died. The queen passed away. We have no further information on any of this. We just hear that the queen passed away. Did she pass away from an illness? Did she pass away from an accident? Was there a battle? Like, how did the queen die? We do not know. We are definitely going to get a flashback involving Loki and his, you know, his upbringing and everything like that. Now, in the case with Odin, like, he was rather rambunctious around Wano, okay? He caused a lot of havoc, right? But, you know, he definitely caused a lot of property damage. Let's say that, of course. And Loki did as well, as we're going to get to in the next things, right? But at the end of the day, Odin was a good person. Odin was a really good person, okay? He was a bit of a wild child, but he was a good guy, you know? And it's like, especially when he had to do the dancing and everything to try to save all the people of Wano, right? He did what he had to do. There was never any question in, like, Odin's backstory. Like, yeah, he caused a lot of trouble in the country, but it's like, oh, he wasn't going around wantonly, like, slaughtering people in the streets. To be fair, Loki, they're not saying he did that either, but we'll get into that kind of indirectly in the next one. So, finally, after, like, what is this? Like, 1, 2, 3, 4 things that are claiming him to be the accursed prince. Finally, at the 5th thing, we finally have something that Loki has a little bit of accountability for, okay? So Loki at age 10 started going down into the underworld, and he started playing with all the crazy wild beasts that are down there, right? Like the giant gorillas and dinosaurs and, you know, the wolves and everything like that down in the primordial world. He killed a bunch of them, he tamed a few, and then he sent a few into the villages, and he was only like 10 years old when this happened, okay? So, yeah, I mean, that's his fault. Sure, you could throw that onto him. But also, I want to just set the stage a little bit here that probably his entire life as a child, I'm starting to notice some similarities between Loki and Naruto. Huh. Wait a minute. I don't know if that's intentional, because Kishimoto and Oda are friends, and they were like rivals in Shonen Jump for quite some time. And there's a few references to Naruto in One Piece and then vice versa. So I don't know where Oda's going with here, but like the idea that like as soon as Naruto was born, you know, everybody in the village kind of hated him. It's like, oh yes, he's the demon child, what with brought all the curse and suffering, and everybody died, and the Nine Tails and all that kind of jazz, right? We're not supposed to talk about it, but the Nine Tails, right? And so then, you know, Naruto goes out there and he, you know, is looking for attention, and he's causing all sorts of trouble in the town. You know, Naruto did some graffiti. Loki released a bunch of giant wild animals and attacked some villages. You know, it's just the fires of youth. You know, it's just, hey, come on. You got into some craziness when you were a kid too, right? Like, yeah. Just occasionally, yeah. I remember one day I got home from school, and I don't know why. I was just like, I was walking up to my house, and my dad was outside the house, and I just picked up a rock or a bunch of rocks in my hand, and I just threw them all up in the air, and they all landed on my dad's new Ram truck. And my dad's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I just felt like throwing rocks up in the air. It's like, yeah, releasing giant wolves into a village. Yeah, it'll be fine. Did anybody die? Did anybody die? No one said anybody died. They just said he released a few animals into the village. Maybe he was just trying to give them a nice home. Maybe he was trying to see if people wanted to adopt the giant mammoth. You know, oh, no. Like, it's all right, right? They also just say, I love how they just shout, he was an arsonist. And then we see Loki laughing his ass off as an entire village is burning in the background. Okay, do we know he's an arsonist? Did we see him start those fires? Maybe he wandered onto a village that was, you know, on fire, and he just laughed about it. Okay, he was probably the guy that started the fires. I'll give you that much. I'll give you that much. Okay, he's not, like I said, he still killed his father. That still happened. Okay, but they go on to talk about King Harald here, right? And they mentioned that, you know, King Harald, he was such a great king. He was a wise, just king that was going to bring Elbaf into a new era of peace and connection with the outside world and all that. Also remember that they mentioned a few chapters ago that it was King Harald's, like, like he was the benefactor of the Owl Library. Like, the existence of the Owl Library and the Walrus School are kind of there because King Harald, like, you know, he's like, oh, Saul, you can do this. You could start this whole institution up, and Saul went ahead and did that, right? I guess the library was there beforehand, but Biblo was in Elbaf for hundreds of years, but those institutions we saw were because of King Harald, okay? So I'm also not going to say King Harald was a complete asshole, right? I'm not going to say that. I mean, he could have been. He could have been straight up evil. He could have been like, yes, I will pretend to care about the country's, you know, education and peace and all that. But in reality, he was evil. Or he could just be very misguided. He could have been a very naive king. He could have been actually the most naive king in the world. All right, we could have been talking about Don Quixote homing levels of naivete here, okay? Really. By the way, I want to clarify something. So we do see an image of King Harald. It's partially, you know, silhouetted, and we see the shadow. We don't see his face. But we do see an image of Harald with his sword. And I was kind of curious about this because I thought it was a flashback at first, like it was Jarl, sorry, Jarl's dead. Jarl remembering King Harald, and so that was the image. No, it was a painting. That was the thing that was bugging me in the chapter. I couldn't quite, you know, figure out what that panel was. It was most likely it's a painting of King Harald that was in the castle, okay? And the painting is, I thought it was the Black Lightning from the Summoning Circle or hockey or something. It was most likely a crack. You can see, like, it's a cracked painting of him in the castle, and he's sitting on the throne, and he has his sword, which, by the way, a lot of people pointed out, that sword King Harald is holding in the picture looks exactly like the sword that's impaling Jarl in the head. Thank God his helmet was able to save him. That was a close one. But, like, what if, yeah, and it was mentioned Jarl got that wound trying to stop Loki from killing his father. So what if Loki picked up the sword of King Harald, tried to kill Harald with his own sword, and then Jarl stepped in and was just like, no, Loki, you can't. And it went, what if it went right through Jarl and stabbed Harald, and that's what killed him? Oh, my God. And somehow Jarl survived. That would be so absurd and ridiculous, but also One Piece, right? No. Or it could have just been like, yeah, Jarl gets stabbed, he falls unconscious, but he's still somehow alive. Maybe King Harald's sword had a special property to it or something, and that's what didn't kill him. Maybe because King Harald was like, I am the king of peace and understanding. Maybe his sword was incapable of taking another life. I don't know. It's One Piece. We could just, that's a great explanation for everything. Just, it's One Piece. Yeah, there you go. That was easy, right? Okay. At any rate, though, I am kind of leaning toward that naivete thing, right? So he's just like, we will open the world up to the entire, to the entire world, and we'll, open up peace and trade and everything like that. And I think he was getting taken for a ride by the world government, as it were, like the Gorosei or maybe like the God's Knights were arriving in his throne room. And I've went into all this before on King Harald and everything like that. But is it possible that Loki? I mean, he might have been acting out in one part because everybody was just like, already when he was a little kid, before he had even begun to walk and talk, people had already been judging him based off of other stuff that just happened around his birth. So in one part, he's like, I'm going to act out. I'm going to go and cause havoc in the villages. I'm going to light fires. I'm going to let wild animals loose around Elbaf just for the sake of attention. That was definitely part of it. Definitely got some Naruto vibes there, right? But another aspect of this is when Loki was starting to get a little older, maybe he overheard a conversation between King Harald and the world government, or maybe he just overheard a conversation with the world government, like maybe the God's Knights were saying something, they were in a waiting room or something, and King Harald heard about it, and he tried to stop him, and he couldn't, and I don't know, maybe that's the reason he started the fires, maybe that's the reason he caused the wild animals to be released, I don't know, like, it was for some reason to not allow Elbaf to be open to the world. Okay, is like, no, I gotta stop this somehow, and this is the only way I know how. Okay, even if it means like ruining my reputation as like, but his reputation was already ruined. That was the thing. And we know that Loki is not a bad dude. I mean, like, yes, in this same chapter, his wolf friend was being strangled to death by one of the God's Knights, and Loki was just like, okay, well, I wish you a peaceful death, wolf. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do, God's Knights, just because you're threatening my friend. Okay, I hope my friend dies quickly, and then I'll take all that anger and rage and I'll throw it on the fire, and then I'll use that when I get freed, and I'll burn the whole world down. Okay, now that could also just be a projection of the idea of like, everybody's hated me my whole life, so, I'm just going to use that anger and then just, direct it right back at the world, okay? It's just like, if that's the kind of person you want me to be, I will be that person, right? But that might not be his genuine personality. That might not be who he really wants to be, inside. It's just like, okay, well, that's the way the world sees me, so that's the way I will be, kind of situation like that, right? There's layers to Loki. There's a lot of layers going on here, and there's part of this story that I know Oda is going to flip on its head, because this is a total Oda maneuver where it's like, yeah, everybody loves King Harald. They think he was great. Everybody hates Loki. He's evil. It's like, no. And we just came out of a story arc where Vegapunk delivered a message, and in that message, he was talking about how good and evil, two sides of the same coin, like, it's never that simple. There's always more nuance to this. And, I think that's definitely going to be the case with Loki and Harald, okay? Yeah, but that's the story of Loki from the perspective of the giants. Now, what I liked about that conversation with Zoro and Luffy is that Zoro was like, let's hear him out. Zoro wasn't immediately like, well, everybody in the village said he was a piece of shit, so therefore he is unequivocally, objectively a piece of shit. Zoro was like, well, he might have been lying to you, Luffy, because the consensus with all the giants seems to be he's a bastard. But let's go and let's hear him out and let's assess his side of the story, and then we'll see where we go from there, okay? So at least Zoro's being a little fair about all this, okay? And then Nami just wants the treasure, okay? So there's that. But yeah, what do you think about Loki? Do you think he's just a chill dude? Or do you think here's a question. Loki's gonna get freed eventually. I would hope in like the next few chapters, Loki gets freed from his chains. The first thing that Loki does when he's freed is going to be a big indication on his character. Because the way he's talking about all this stuff, and even in the last chapter, we learned something very important. He doesn't want to be a member of the Celestial Dragons. He views the Celestial Dragons as evil, as pieces of scum on Earth, okay? So he does have scruples. He has ethics and morals, okay? But anyway, Loki gets freed. You'd think the first thing he would want to do, he keeps saying it. He keeps saying, I want to destroy the world, right? So the first thing he would do, you'd think, is like, I'm going to chop down this tree. I'm going to burn all of Elbaf to the ground. I'm going to sink it beneath the oceans. I'm going to cause upheaval, the likes of which you've never seen before, right? What if he doesn't do that? It depends on who's around him when he's freed. If the God's Knights are still there, like if Luffy and Nami and Zoro show up and the God's Knights are there, and maybe Luffy and Zoro have to fight against Shanks' brother and Gunko, and then Nami goes off to free Loki. It's like, Nami, you free Loki. We'll fight these guys or whatever, right? That's the kind of situation. Dude, first thing after Loki's freed, and even like Zoro's like, we didn't have time to talk to him. We don't know if that's a good idea. Loki's freed, and the first thing is like, and then he takes out his hammer, but he doesn't go after the tree. He doesn't try to kill Nami. He doesn't try to kill Luffy or Zoro. First thing he does, though, is he directs all that rage and that hammer right down on Gunko for killing the wolf. That would be an indication right then and there of like, okay, he's avenging his friend's death. He's not going after the tree immediately. He's not going after the innocents immediately, like wanton destruction. No, he's very focused in kill. And then let's say he kills her. Let's say like Loki straight up kills one of the God's Knights, and then Shanks' brother leaves or something. Like, okay, I gotta get out of here, and then he leaves or something, right? And then what happens after that? What does Loki do? He's like, oh, thanks for freeing me, you idiots! Ah! And then he goes and attacks the Straw Hats. That would also indicate the kind of person he is, but we'll have to wait and see. I think Loki's going to be freed relatively soon. You heard it here first. What was this, chapter 1136? Loki is going to be freed by chapter 1139. Wait. 1140. He'll be freed by chapter 1140. That's my prophecy. Woo! Well, that was the video. Bye. Hope you have a good day. I hope you have a delicious day. You know what? Go out to your favorite restaurant today and have some food, even if it's a bit of a drive. Go get some food. Go get your favorite meal. You should go do that. Yeah. Have a good day, everybody. Tech King signing out.